Okay, it is 6 o'clock, and according to what I read, we're supposed to start at 6 o'clock, so. This is the second of two capital budget presentations with the joint boards of selectmen and boards of finance for the town of Woodbridge. Today is Tuesday, December 5th, and the first item on our agenda, or the first presentation on our agenda is Warren Connors with Public Works.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm not sure. I think the order is starting with trucks.
Yeah.
Your itinerary.
Yeah.
We've requested a large truck for this year, and then moving out, there's different vehicles throughout the 6-year plan. I don't know if anybody has any questions pertaining to that.
I know we haven't bought one in a while. Larger truck.
Right, and because the budget last year was deferred, we actually have our spare is almost ready to be decommissioned. So the truck that this would replace would take one truck we currently have in the fleet and move that out into that position, so that we have newer vehicles on the roadworthy fleet.
So the 179 is one truck?
One truck.
So there's one in...
Yeah. The following truck would be like a Mason style vehicle in the following year. Then we go back to a big truck, then to a pickup. So you can see how the numerics go. Yeah. That money represents it's a dump body truck with a plow, and the sander's incorporated into the body. So that's what that money represents.
The normal average life cycle of the trucks.
We're pushing 20 to 23 years out of a truck. That seems to be the normal replacement schedule, but obviously we rotate. Our rolling fleet is more than just plow trucks. We have other small body trucks. We have pickup trucks in order for us to do our work. So we alternate the replacement schedule. I mean, if I go by need, obviously if you talk to my staff, they'd say, well, this truck should come off the road and this should be the spare, so on and so forth, earlier than what we do. I mean, there are towns that look at it, they like 10 years as a life cycle on a truck. 12 years would be, pushing it out. We get a little bit more life cycle, and obviously with the garage being built, that's going to preserve our fleet a little bit longer. So right now, our fleet is operational, but you can see the signs of age. Rust starts, other things from an operational standpoint that you have to take the truck out of service, and then we use it as a spare. We always have to have something, because if a truck breaks down, we need something to put back on the road and place it at stock.
I have a question. Is this really a reserve, or you're planning each year on buying a new vehicle?
This is, it's not really a reserve.
Okay.
The reserve represents a cash allotment to replace the fleet at a scheduled time.
Okay, so it's not as if you have an existing pot of money and you're just adding to
Correct.
that. Okay.
You'll see in other parts of my budget that kind of is a representation.
Right.
Can I follow up on that? Because
Sure.
you're actually showing the current reserve balance of
There is about $20,000, yeah.
28.
Right.
So my question was, we had talked about these truck reserves going way back, but we haven't had a truck reserve.
No.
So what's that money?
So it's essentially what will happen is if you allot 200,000 and 179 and the price is less than 179, or
then you just throw it into it.
it stays in the account and doesn't really go anywhere. We don't reappropriate it for any other purpose.
So that's small money that's kind of built up.
Correct.
Okay, but
Correct,
we
yeah.
haven't really,
Yeah.
Keep in mind that the price that I'm representing, you'll see that the price is consistent going out in the 6-year plan for the same vehicle. So we go out to bid, and it's whatever we can get.
right.
To have a reserve fund for any of these vehicles, it's if the price comes in higher than what I'm anticipating the cost is, we don't lose the cost of the ability to purchase that vehicle because we're short some funds.
Right, but at the last meeting, we talked about when we buy equipment or vehicles that have expected life.
Right.
Do we put, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 away for the next 20 years, so we have 100,000 in the truck account, something like that, I don't know.
No,
I don't think we
we do
do
not.
that.
No.
I mean, there are towns that we're somewhat soft on our purchasing prices, but we've been able to purchase trucks in the past to meet this price that I'm representing. You know, moving out, you know, let's say 2 years from now, that number may get changed. It
Right.
might have to go up.
Yeah,
But
no, I
know towns that
understand.
are buying the same trucks we're buying, and they're starting at like 185. So we're a little bit soft, but in dealing with the vendors and communications for what we want, we're able to keep the numbers crunched a
And
little.
sometimes when we get closer to the budget process, and let's say it's, 179 plus 20, that's 200,000. And we'll look at the pricing and maybe we drop that a little. 179 maybe get dropped.
Yeah. I think my larger point is, should we be thinking about an actual truck reserve instead of just calling it a truck reserve? Should we think about a truck reserve?
I mean,
Well-
I think we can, Joe, but the problem is that there's this need every year for the next 6 years to buy something. So
Yeah.
are you saying in addition to what's here, you wanna put money aside? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, if you don't start sometime, you'll never do it.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but that's the
So
question I'm
yes,
asking.
the answer is yes.
Okay.
I'm suggesting that we would
I
at
mean,
least
from-
think and talk about that.
From my perspective, I think trucks are important, and you know that there's a life cycle on them, and they're gonna have to be updated in order to keep it. Some of the stock we have, they're pretty old, and they're pretty beat up. You know, I got a request from some of the staff to update the pickups, but yet the driver that's gotta go out and commit himself to doing a route, that's where the responsibility is. We push off. Could I potentially buy a pickup in the same year that I'm buying a dump truck? That might be a possibility as well. But right now, I'm trying to keep it
Sure.
kind of
Sure.
balanced. But yet, in another portion of the budget, when I get into like the equipment reserve, and what Joe was saying, I think that it's more important from my perspective to look at that in other portions of the budgets rather than with the truck.
So the equipment reserves is a better idea of what you're saying, because in year
Yes.
5, there's a payloader. If you look at the
Right, and that's been kind of pushed out again as well because of last year's budget. We didn't fund anything. But in the equipment reserve line, as we're calling it a reserve, this money represents the commitment to fund the price of the sweeper that we had over a period of years. And then we're not getting out until we get into the year 23 for the payloader. And I was just down garage today because we're getting salt deliveries, and I was looking at the condition of the payloader down there. I mean, we're stretching it out. There's signs of decay, the flooring inside the cab, outside the cab, the doors starting to rust on the thing. So, I mean, deferring it, I think it'll go the life cycle that but there's a big number at the end of that cycle. So without maybe what Joe is saying, have a reserve, you can build up so that you don't have that big crunch in 1 year.
But why doesn't that? No logic.
Well, trucks, because it's a rotating schedule. And
But we're
so
not-
the need is not so much there. We're not, the numbers are higher across the 6-year plan, but when you get into buying equipment, you can see the number in that it's a big number in 1 year. So the allotment of having, let's say, the $60,000 request and then to go to the 190 for the loader.
I do follow it now, so the reason is because we didn't start when we first bought trucks.
Exactly.
We did, right.
We used to do this, that more balanced, but a few years came where we had to reduce the budget, and so the reserves got reduced to reflect what was actually being purchased in that year, and so that's what happened. It never got back on the
And
track.
the other thing with the equipment reserve is we may have a need that's not, let's say, budgeted for, that something comes up, or an opportunity comes up when we can acquire a piece of equipment that's not scheduled to be acquired. And if something, let's say an opportunity, there's a sale, like we rent excavators and things like that, and if we had a reserve, or maybe we have an opportunity with the loader, instead of purchasing it in the year projected, we might be able to get it sooner.
When's the last time you bought a new plow truck?
That was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
Right.
So, and before that?
It's about every 2 years. It's every other year is what our scheduled replacement is.
Novel expense. This is
No, it's a
It's pretty routine.
routine,
Yeah, okay.
Right. How many do we have?
We have 9 pieces of rolling stock that are committed to
You have
routes.
9 routes too, right?
9 routes,
There's 9
yeah,
plow
yeah.
routes.
And we have 10 trucks, but the 10th truck is a reserve if somebody breaks down or if one of the mechanics can go out and do something around town to assist.
So what's our oldest truck right now?
About 23, 24
And that's
years
what we're
old.
looking to replace.
The one we're looking is, I think it's, this one here would be roughly a 2000, 99, 2000.
So we have
I think I have it in my breakdown sheet.
I guess what I'm getting at is we have 9 trucks in the last 20-something years, then we don't buy one every year.
That-
We don't
that-
buy
Every
one.
once in a
There's
while,
gonna be a
it's
point when
different.
we could start to put
This-
some money away.
This truck that we're scheduled is a 96 that we're scheduled to replace.
Now, that makes sense, because, yeah, it's old,
21.
21. And then the next
Well,
oldest
by
one.
the time we get it, it's actually pushing out to 23 years by the time we get it.
But out of those 9, do we have 3 or 4 or 5 that are under 10 years old? We've been
Yes.
buying them every year, right?
Yes.
So our fleet's gonna get younger real soon, and then we could start a reserve rate. I don't
Well,
know.
we acquired, I think it was in 2000, 2001, we had backup purchases of 2 vehicles. So with that inventory, we acquired like 2. And there was a period historically where we acquired actually 2 trucks in 1 year. So, the problem with that is when 2 trucks go down, you have 2 trucks in the same year, they're basically wearing out at the same time, and you're confronted with that same thing again.
Yeah, I think that's my point.
I think overall over the years, we've done okay with this.
We try to stay on
Trucks
top
Stay on
of
the
it.
road, they're
Yeah.
in good shape. And,
I mean, short of maybe a hydraulic
I
leak
know
or
that
something
Maine, when we had the
unanticipated.
blizzard a few years ago, a few trucks went down.
Yes,
That's everywhere.
it wasn't just us.
Right. Trying to push 3 feet of snow. to
Yeah.
do it. So, okay. As far as the road construction, that's something we've been, the 850,000 a year, we've been doing that forever. Actually, we
No, it
cut
was
that.
less, it was
We
less.
cut it down
700.
last year,
No, I know, but it wasn't that, I was never 850.
It was 700.
No,
Yeah,
it's
seven.
700,000.
Yeah, now we're a little
700, yeah.
behind, so.
So are we trying to make up for that, is that it?
In part because where we had 2 budget years where we didn't get entire funding.
Yes.
And trying, rather than come back in 1 year and ask, I mean, from my perspective
You do it
and knowing
in
what the
1 year.
needs, I should be asking maybe double what I'm asking for. But, I understand the town is confronted with a lot of things, and then we can only prepare so much road in a given year without outsourcing the work. So I'm trying to stay in line with what we're doing.
There were a lot of people who, I heard from, who complained about cutting roads last year, a lot, so I think it's something we've got to stay on top of.
Yeah, in the last 2
It's
years,
important.
basically each year, we lost 2 roads in each year that we didn't get done. So that puts us, from a planning perspective, in the rears right off the get-go.
Any other, the other thing is this bridge and waters mentioned, that's just a,
Well, something came to light after the preparation of this request, that our waterways reserve is also some of the deep mandates for stormwater requirements. We had an estimate come in that planned out over the next 5 years under the deep requirements. And the engineer that submitted that, he's coming up with roughly $48,000 a year that we should be budgeting to meet the deep requirements. Now, in part, I'm dealing with 2 vendors. Part of what his estimate, it's a little over from what I anticipate, because we're dealing with one engineering firm to do part of the requirements and another engineering firm to do the other part of the requirements. So this is a quote from one engineer. But over the 5 years, he's estimating $225,000 for meeting the deep requirements.
Explain a little what the stormwater requirements are and
Well,
what we're required to do.
There's new things that are happening with stormwater, and a lot of it's regulatory, but there's going to be more responsibility for us for sampling water in what we consider critical or endangered waterways. West River happens to be one of those. It could be not in our area, but anything contributes to it. So we have to do sampling of water. We have to mitigate any things that we might find. The annual testing is not showing any problems on our end, but DEEP doesn't know that. They're taking it across the board and they're saying you have to do this and you have to do that. So to meet those requirements, illicit discharges, construction activities that are all upstream, they all play an integral part of this. And then what you might have to do as a municipality to take corrective actions to reduce that mitigation. The other thing they're looking at is any impervious surface. They want to reduce impervious surface, and that could be pavement, roof lines, anything that would discharge water, so it's containment and managing that water. And so they're trying to get a better handle throughout the entire state and the country to mitigate problems that are emitted in these endangered waters. So we've allotted dollars and you can see a lot of this on our website with the stormwater plan, what we're doing. But with these new regulations that are coming in, they're unfunded mandates, and we're taking it a step at a time. We're meeting our goals, but from a projection process, when I sat with Tony and talked about the funding to meet the obligation of what this reserve might encompass, initially it was constructed to deal with possibly a reserve for reconstructing a bridge or dealing with a cross culvert or something of that nature. But now we have a lot of engineering costs that are coming in, and so this number might be soft from that perspective. But it's still addressing what we think might be a need for the culverts and the bridges, keeping a reserve in place for that.
Any other questions for Warren on this? All right, then waste management, which is a couple of tabs down. Guess you have a couple of items, Warren, on waste management.
Yeah,
I think you talked about the scales.
we have a reserve that's already in place for the scale, but then there's some talk about software to meet the office manager, myself. We sat and we got these costs, and we're looking at from operating the system to meet the town's requirements of reporting and making it accessible from the operators at the transfer station. And so we're putting a number assigned to basically all the software operation to meet the requirements that the platform that we'd like to use for the software. So that's what that number represents. The other thing is the compactor replacement. It's been very difficult to get quotations from vendors because the system is so old, and they now have systems that are going to meet the tonnage requirements to operate, and they're probably a little bit smaller in size from the compactor, but they're still. I'm asking for reserve money because if I take the money that we have in place and then to possibly replace just one compactor, I need that money to meet that minimum commitment for that one compactor. And we have people doing an electrical analysis of what was going on up at the transfer station right now, because some of the people we brought in said that the technology is older and their systems won't operate on the platform that we have there. So we're trying to see, he's going to get a report given to us about what's needed electrically to meet the operation commitments of the new compactor that we have spec'd out.
Warren, you have $30,000 for FY19. That's for one compactor?
One compactor.
And there's a reserve of how much?
Well, we have roughly, I think it was just under 70,000 that we have currently to meet all the needs of everything at the transfer.
Like what?
Well, the scale and the compactor. The reserve was built on in past years.
Who's the scale?
The-
We had the money last year for the scale.
Okay, so then this 20 is additional?
Right, correct.
Right, because the cost of the compactors actually came in higher than what we thought. The numbers that we originally submitted in our request were based on the cost with an increase of what the original compactors were put in for, but we're finding that it's going to cost more to replace them.
This scale, okay?
Yes.
Are you weighing trucks coming in with stuff? I mean, if
This will be both the people that come in and any trucks that come out, because we can't validate the tickets. We're not that there's anything dishonest going on, but we want to validate what's going on. But any of the haulers that come in, that pick up in town, we want to weigh those trucks, because that's part of the reporting process right now. And then the other issue is anybody that comes in with a payable item, meaning bulk or brush, those types of things, we're guesstimating quantities, and we're paying a lot more for tonnages than what we're taking in.
So we might be saving money in the long run. by
Well,
being
it
charged
probably,
more.
it'll
Charging
balance
more
out,
and-
but it'll also aid us in
Yeah.
the reporting. That we have to submit reports annually,
Yeah.
and so when that reporting needs to be done, rather than manually tabulate everything,
You have an
the
accurate-
scale with the computerization will tally everything for us. And then if a question arises, you know, from a resident or a hauler that comes in with material, the scale's there. You know, we're not debating whether you have this much on a vehicle or that much on a vehicle.
So when a hauler comes in with one of the guys that picks up our stuff, what does he do with it?
The regular household waste,
Yeah,
they just,
does he dump it in that,
they go to the compactors and dump it in, just like you would if
Really?
you were dropping off.
that big thing goes in there?
Yep.
Really? So again, weighing that, it's not, you're not gonna be obviously going through it and sorting it, so you're not.
No,
It's not a case
no,
of
when
saying,
they-
well,
when
maybe
they
you're
come in,
picking up
though-
stuff in West Haven and you're bringing it here. This is
Correct.
strictly just to
But it's
monitor the
it's
amounts.
more for the payable items, but we would have a representative of all the material that comes in,
Yeah.
no matter what's being dropped off.
There's an operational question. Some places charge tonnage, pass along the tonnage charges, haulers, town waste, on a, that we pay,
Right.
some don't. Some places, you know, sort of it's a question on how you want to operate the transfer.
Yeah, right.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, UConn put out, through their listserv, there's a lot of towns, this question comes up, you know, what do you charge? How do you operate? Is it a pay-as-you-go? Is it, you know, what days of the week are you open? How much do you charge for this? How much do you charge for that? We're kind of in line with there, but we're, like with the payable items we have, we're guesstimating quantities in reality.
Yeah.
Because people, how they load it on the vehicle, it could look like a lot more, but they have a lot less. But then we have some vehicles, they come in, and we know they're way over capacity. And we're not getting, let's say, by weight, because that's how we pay when we dispose.
Right.
So by volume and by weight could be two different things that are far apart.
You'd have to change your, because now you have to pay ahead of time, like if you're bringing in, construction debris.
Well, yeah.
so
But
much
there's a lot of
cubic yard.
material that comes in that goes in those containers that are not being paid for.
Oh.
Meaning the resident comes in, you come in with a furniture item. It might go in the demolition because it's processed that way, but it's not a payable item to be disposed of. So we can keep track and sort that out. How much is coming in that kind of waste versus, you know, true construction demolition.
Gotcha. Any other questions on?
Yeah, I do. A clarification, when is the scale scheduled to be implemented?
We don't, that depends on, we've got soft quotes for budget purposes. There's nothing hard. We have a lot of site preparation that would have to be done by the town in order to have the scale put in. And then the scale itself would have to be constructed. So there's no timeline for that right now because it's only in the budgetary stage to have enough money to move forward.
And I'm told that with the scale, we would have more revenue, right? Is that true?
That, it should benefit us.
Where's it gonna be located, the scale?
When you come into the transfer station right now through the gate
Yeah.
and you wrap around the bend to the gatehouse,
Yeah.
we're gonna have to kind of straighten that out a little bit and take some of that shoulder off. That the tree line would be encroached. We'd have to probably put like where we have a drop-off wall where some of the bulk items go when the
Right.
containers are full.
Yeah.
We'd have to construct a small wall along that drive coming in. So it will be off the main drive lane because not every vehicle is gonna be weighed. So we'd have to construct it and have basically two access lanes, one for the scale, where you'd have to pull on, and then one for the residents that just come in with their household
But
waste.
it would still follow that wraparound.
It would follow the same route that we currently have.
Anything else?
You have to have a really big bathroom towel.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can only measure.
have left is the fire commission.
Good evening.
Evening. Okay, so our capital budget, when we came up with this, we really didn't have a chance to really sit down and talk to Tony and Beth. What I just passed out is basically a breakdown on how we would pay for the apparatus over a number of years. And what we've done and we did it last year, is we put everything in that is up. And we're talking about trucks that are usually 25 years and above, so it's really not below that. But just because we show it in FY19 doesn't mean that we're paying for it in FY19. It means we want to order it. Usually takes about 6 months, 6, 8, sometimes 10 months to design a truck. And then once we sign a contract for the truck, then for an engine, the build time to build the engine is usually between 12 and 15 months. And for an aerial truck is a 2-year build time. What happens after that is, it depends on how the leasing works, and Tony can discuss it. Usually we pay for it in the rear, so once we take delivery of the truck, the first payment isn't due until the following year. So we actually really don't need money this year for the trucks we're looking to order. We would need it in years out. So,
That's what
I'm
you
sorry.
have to say.
Yeah, this is what it's on
There's
the.
a lot of different ways to do this, there's a lot of different scenarios, there's a lot of different ways to structure this. This is just one example of if the items were financed as indicated in the request, this is how that would be laid out. So you can see the attached schedule is a rough idea of how much a cost would be for each year for each of the vehicles, and then in total, similar to like how you schedule bond payments. That's essentially what you have is debt when you enter into a lease. But so it just gives you an idea of how it would look if you went forward in this manner. This can obviously be changed or designed differently based on different sets of assumptions. It's more of like a financing plan. We put the assumptions on the first page so you can see what was built into that schedule. For you to review.
So it's not clear to me, are you proposing leasing some and buying others, or leasing everything,
This
or buying
particular
everything?
scenario proposes leasing all of these vehicles on different schedules at different times based on when you buy it, how long it takes to build it, that sort of thing. So
Okay,
the idea would be, the impact to the budget would be here.
okay.
And so,
So it's still a design build, but it's not a purchase, it's a lease.
and that's just one way to do it. You can buy
Okay.
them, you could borrow for them, you can not do anything. You can not buy, buy them at all.
I have a structural question. So when you do the design lease, design build, you buy it and you build it, so to speak. But the financial obligation is from day one, not from when you take delivery a year and a half later. I'm just asking structurally, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
It's a contractual obligation.
I understand. I just
I
wanted to
mean,
be
we signed a
clear about that.
contract to order it
I got it.
once it goes, after it goes out to
Right.
bid. But I think the key on the first page is if you look at the difference in the dates for the specification and bids versus the delivery and the initial payment, it's 3 to 4 years out, depending on on which apparatus and how long it takes to build.
You want to run through each truck, or would you like?
Are they in order of priority? Boards
far as need is, we've got the engine 7 first. You look
No,
at
engine
funding.
7,
I can answer that question. The first two are actual leases. I should have clarified that. Numbers 1 and 2 are actual purchases and leases that exist.
So they already
Engine
have- they already
7.
have engine 7.
Yeah. we
correct.
have
Yeah.
engine
Yes,
7,
and
we have
it's
the
not a
airbags.
1991, it's a 2015.
Yeah.
This was the newest.
That
Yeah.
replaced the
Right,
1991.
Yeah,
they
you're right.
replaced the
So
1991.
which truck, I know there's one truck you, last year we told you to start designing.
Engine
3 through
3.
6.
That's engine 3?
Engine 3, when the bid specs are almost done with that, and it'll be hopefully going out to bid sometime, I'm gonna say in
And
January.
They're placed in order of the age of the engine. Isn't that how we did that? 89,
Sorry,
90.
second?
They were placed in order of the year, right? Isn't that how you did that?
That's
89,
I mean,
90.
Yeah,
that
the
list is
truck-
chronological,
Chronological, yeah.
and that's the priority is based on age and condition.
So engine 3 is 31 years old. Like Matt was saying, we talked about this in the springtime to start designing it. We're almost done with the bid spec, and once we have that, we'll send it out to bid and then come back to you guys. So we can order engine 3 this year, or next year.
The problem with engine 3, just, and you'll hear about this when we get into operating budgets, is that's requiring more and more repair and maintenance each year. And we just feel like we're throwing good money after bad, trying to keep that vehicle on the road. I mean, this requires major repairs every year. 'Cause it's-
So we tried,
Schedule of
it's-
those repairs?
do we have what we spent
Can
on
you
it?
quantify major
Sure.
repairs for us, so
Sure.
when we see that, it's nice to say, but it'd be more effective if we see how much money we're throwing, how
Sure.
much bad money we're throwing at, you know?
I was just giving you a coming attraction.
Yeah, okay, good. Can't wait.
All right,
That was the
so-
trailer for the movie.
So basically, we already have obligations for engine 7, the air packs.
That's correct.
And actually,
That's it.
and, well, we do really for engine 3 because we told them to go
Yes,
ahead with the
that's
design.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's true, yeah.
So we have those obligations
Yeah.
already. Those are a given.
So
So
do we know the amount of engine 3 at this point?
They're gonna have to
We haven't gone out to bid
Waiting
yet.
for
Yeah,
the
They're-
design.
they're
Once they
designing
design
it.
it, then they put it out to bid anyway.
right. And then what, as Sean was saying, after they deliver it to us, we usually don't pay for it if we're purchasing it for one more year after the delivery date.
Well, on a
Right.
lease, it's a lease purchase.
We should take that.
This was a lease purchase, engine 3?
Well, not yet. We haven't finished it.
So we haven't decided yet
But engine
if this is a
And
lease or
what'll
purchase.
happen is-
Okay, I just want to be clear about this.
That's the way we've been doing it.
Yeah, but historically,
Okay.
we've been doing it through a lease. And what we do is we evaluate when the bids come back, what the market is, what the rates are,
Mhm.
you know. I mean, one of the ways,
Annual lease payments?
they're annual lease.
One lease payment a year. Yeah, an annual lease.
Usually that's how it works, unless semi-annual payments or the rate's better, or if we could do, arrears versus upfront. We run all different scenarios and we figure which one is the most advantageous.
Okay,
For
so,
instance, the air packs we paid, the first year we actually made a payment because the rates were, at that time, it would make more sense to make first payment as soon as they were delivered, as opposed to waiting a year.
okay,
It all depends. It also depends on where the budget is and
all right. So is the lease term column, is this from the beginning of the lease to the end, or is this where we are today, the lease term?
that's from the beginning to the end.
So, so engine 7, which was 2015,
Yeah, look
there's
at
a
the-
5-year lease.
Look at the attached.
Okay,
You can
and
see
it
it on the
goes to
attached.
2020.
So we're
2021.
We're in 18. We
Okay.
made the second payment already this year.
Right.
So we have 3 more.
Okay,
But you see the air packs.
Yeah.
If you go on to
got it.
this,
Okay,
you could see it.
Now-
Because
now I
engine
understand.
7 was actually acquired in 2015, right? 16, right?
all right,
2016.
16
and we paid for it
December-ish.
17.
Yeah.
okay.
And 18.
Tony, was engine 3 included in your debt analysis that you did when we were looking at the radio system?
No, I didn't include the.
Any of the
yes.
apparatus?
No.
Okay. But it sounds like we're going to have an obligation for engine 3.
Right.
And it's just deciding at the time what's the best way to finance it.
Right, correct.
So really what we're talking about in terms of additional funding is the ladder truck, engine 9, and engine 2. Is that
Right, and
correct?
engine 2, in fairness,
Engine-
is not in their budget. Right, it's not in your request because
No.
it's past 6 years.
Right.
We won't be
Six-year
around.
So-
capital.
We won't be around.
It's a
for
6-year.
engine two,
I see,
Sandy.
yeah, okay, yeah, that's right,
Yeah.
definitely.
Right. So engine 2, you really can,
It's for the young whippersnappers.
There you
at the
go,
table.
yeah,
yeah,
okay,
you can take that one off. That was just because it would.
okay, got
I
it.
think what engine 2 does is it shows that when the next piece
It
after
just shows you when
these
the next
three are
piece
up.
is
Right.
coming along, coming down the line, that's all.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're talking about ladder truck and engine 9, then, really, right? It's really down to those
Unless you're
two.
gonna stay on for 10 more years.
No,
Right.
no,
For the trucks, for the apparatus.
yes, for the
Yes.
apparatuses,
Yep.
yes, okay.
And just to be clear, I know you've approved going out to bid process, but the amount hasn't been defined as yet.
No.
So even though we know we're going to buy engine 3, we have no idea how much it's gonna cost us.
We know engine 3 is going to be
Rough
around
estimate.
$750,000. It's-
And the
Best
750 is approved, is an approved amount? Or is that,
No.
No,
No,
not yet.
Gotta get the specs done first.
Right.
Once they have their specs done, then we find
Then it
out.
goes
Budget's
bid.
approved in annual.
And then if it's too
payments.
much, they have to cut back their specs.
That's
Got it, that's what I was getting at, thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, value engineering, a famous term, right, Tom?
Are these all pumper trucks that you're replacing, or are they special purpose?
These are engines and the aerial right now.
What about the other?
The tanker trucks, the tanker trucks are pretty newer. One's a 2009, the other one's 2012, I want to say.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're not going to be up probably until we hit like 2030, 2032, somewhere in that area.
And the rescue truck is relatively new as well.
Well, the rescue truck's 2007, so we're looking at 11 years already.
Typically bring to a fire scene?
It all depends what type of fire scene. We'll take the main attack engine, engine 7, engine 9, or engine 3 at a hydrant. We may need another engine relay pump up the road. So, and we usually call for mutual aid. So we, on the average, probably have at least four engines there.
4 engines.
Yeah.
And how many are Woodbridge engines?
I'm sorry?
How many of them are our engines? All 4? It's mentioned mutual
Yes.
aid.
Yeah, and we call mutual aid in and they complement our engines with them. So in theory, you could actually end up using more than 4 engines.
Sometimes mutual aid will be covering the firehouse while our apparatus are at the scene. Or very often they'll be, mutual aid will be supplying additional tankers for water. Which are the typical scenarios.
Like on a house fire with the tankers, we have 2 tankers. Usually we'll probably at a decent house fire, we'll probably be running 6 tankers, 6, 7 tankers. So we constantly keep that loop going so we don't run out of water, because we're flowing anywhere between roughly 1,500 and 2,000 gallons of water a minute. So we're moving quite a bit of water.
And Sean can correct me, but all the trucks have water tanks in them.
Right, I understand that.
And they all have pumps.
There was something on here, there's something that's not on here that I had a question about, might not be relevant, but I recall there was a problem with the hydrants some time ago. Has that been cleared up?
We are working to correct that, and we had a issue at the JCC last year that brought up some questions on flow and volume, which the JCC is in the process of designing what's called a dry hydrant, meaning it's going to go past all the water that comes into private property is basically metered, whether it's a fire hydrant or domestic water inside. So what happens is in the JCC's case is the water came in, it hit a meter. What's the problem with the meter is you lose restriction, so you're losing pressure, you're losing flow in it. Once it gets past that, as soon as we went and we tied into the sprinkler connection for the JCC, the engine at the top of the hill lost water because it didn't have enough pressure, didn't have enough volume or water to get up to the top of the hill, because we also had the incline. So what they're in the process of doing, which the one on down by Brookside Market, the nursing home up in there, the assisted living facility, they put their dry hydrant in after this. So basically we would hit a hydrant on Amity Road, bring water in, tie it into that dry hydrant and feed the complex. So we have enough water, so they have enough water for the sprinkler system, and we have enough water to put the fire out.
And you have an engine that's pumping that water into the
Yeah, so
tank.
that's a dedicated engine, so usually we take an engine and we have to dedicate an engine from the hydrant to that dry hydrant, and that engine's strictly gonna only pump water to that complex, not necessarily put the fire out.
Any more questions?
Is it the norm for a ladder truck aerial apparatus to be double the price of other engines? It just seems
Yeah,
like this
aerials,
seems-
aerials are a lot of money. They are, they're usually more than, a lot more than, what engines are. Engine 7, we bought engine 7 2 years ago. If we were to buy the same engine, I think we're in the area of about 825 right now. 850, so the cost has gone up considerably on just on that engine. And tower truck, we haven't gotten a price in over a year and a half, and that 1.5 might be there, might be a little short, so. But it is the norm for an aerial device to be more than an engine, and depending on the type of engine. So the engines we usually buy, we usually have single axle engines as our attack engines. Engine 7's a tandem axle because in Woodbridge, only 10% of the town has hydrants, so we have to bring water to the fire. So we're usually carrying at least 2,000 gallons of water with us to take with us to get it started on the initial flow. Where if you're in New Haven, you could run a 250 gallon truck or a 500 gallon truck, and that will be fine because you have a hydrant on every corner and you can hit it and you have plenty of water flow to keep up with the fire flow. But here we're tankering water in, so that's why our trucks are a lot bigger and cost more than the average city. Do you want to run? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you
Oh.
if you could talk a little bit about the breathing air compressor.
Yeah, yes. So the breathing air compressor, it needs to be replaced. We're trying to gradually get it to July 1. We're having issues. We've had issues with it. We've replaced a block on the breathing air compressor, which was under warranty a few years ago.
What's the block?
It's what produces the air. It's like the motor of it. So we've had to do a lot of replacements on that, but it's constantly goes down, it constantly fails, and this is really life safety where we have to constantly fill air packs, whether we go to a car fire, house fire, CO call, whatever hazardous condition. We're using the air compressor quite often. So this is something that really needs to be replaced.
How old is this piece of equipment?
Breathing air compressor is, I want to say it was purchased in 2003, 2002. So, and this would come off the Massachusetts state contract because Connecticut doesn't have a contract for a breathing air compressor. So this is what fills the air packs for the guys.
If for some reason it fails, is there a temporary solution?
Yeah, what happens is, and Bethany ran into the same problem and they ended up using ours. So what happens is if you use a air packs or you have a fire, you'll go to Bethany, usually opens their doors and lets us fill our air bottles up there. But it gets kind of tricky, especially in the middle of the night, because then you got to find somebody to open up the firehouse, go up there and fill it, and so on and so on. So usually it's a temporary fix until you get yours fixed. So I'm sure Orange would allow us to use theirs, Bethany would allow us to use theirs, but it ends up being more of a problem because you got to take the bottle and you got to go and get it filled up and then bring it back.
It's a workaround, but it's.
Yeah.
You can't really,
No, that's what I was wondering
you
what
can't really wait 3 or 4 days before you go do it because everything needs to be up and
Need to keep them filled.
full.
Is the budget amount of 105, is that based on like state contract, a unit that's on state contract or something along those lines, or what?
Yes.
What's that based on?
Yeah, we got that number from the vendor we use for breathing air compressor.
So this thing stays in the firehouse?
Yeah, it's a permit.
So what happens if you're at a fire scene and you start running out of air?
Well,
Going back to the firehouse?
No, what we do is on the rescue, we have a cascade system which has 4 6,000 pound bottles. It's not physically 6,000 pounds each, but air-wise, it's 6,000 pressure bottles, and there's 4 of them. And we could fill, I think we could fill up to 20 bottles on that. And then if we need to, we call another town with a similar truck and we can start filling that way. But we have enough spare bottles. We usually keep enough spares. So for every air pack, you have 2 spare bottles. So we're pretty good on that.
And how about the replacement or upgrading of the server?
Yes, so the server, right now we're using small business server, and we need to replace that by 2020, the latest. Because Microsoft is not going to support small business server anymore.
How old is it?
I want to say it's 2011, 2012.
And is this something that could get folded into the attempt to kind of have an integrated technology approach for the town? You know, with Amity, Beecher, town of Woodbridge, is that something we can consider?
Yeah, we talked about it, but we don't really have, there's no plan to move forward right now. I know it's all in the planning stages.
Right.
Right.
But basically in early 2020, which is, you know, two and a half years away. Let's
Yeah,
say.
but it needs to be replaced because Microsoft isn't gonna support it in 2020, but we need to replace it. We're having issues with it now, and
Can you
per our IT company, it should be replaced next July.
So what kind of issues are you
I
having?
mean, like 18 months from now? That next July or?
No, July
This
1
July,
of
18.
18. FY.
It's FY 19, but it's
Yes.
July 2018 that
Yes.
you want it.
Mhm.
Okay. What are the types of issues that you're experiencing?
I can get you a report from them why it needs to be replaced. There's multiple things. I know one is space, the other one, the server keeps going down. But I can get you a whole list. I can get you a printout from the computer, our IT department, people to basically state why it needs to be replaced.
Because maybe this might be an impetus to kind of move a little faster in terms of exploring what we can do with Amity Beecher in the town. Because you need to actually do this, and I think it really behooves us to get everybody on the same types of platforms and the same type of service.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've been interested in this for a number of years, and this is a great opportunity to say, okay, if you want us to join in, you got to do it sooner than later.
I'll give you a trailer. We're working on it very hard.
Okay, okay,
And we're hoping to have something ready fairly soon.
Hoping.
okay.
Yep.
All right.
We just
that would
want
be
our
great.
systems to
So
work.
maybe this
Stay
could be
tuned.
part of it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
It depends, yep.
Yep.
sure,
Yeah.
okay,
Okay.
terrific.
We're working fast and furiously.
Okay.
Excited.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Getting back to the trucks.
Mhm.
Would it make any sense at all, I'm just throwing this out there, to get another tanker truck and replace the pumpers that we have with lower capacity pumpers? Would that save any money, or
No.
would that not be effective?
It wouldn't be effective. The engine does different things than the tanker would. The tanker strictly, it's a commercial truck that just shuttles water, basically.
The capacity of the engines themselves. You said the reason these are so expensive is because of the capacity of the engine.
Well, it's also, you gotta remember, the pump on it, we're talking 2,000 gallon per minute pumps, we're talking air pack storage, we're talking compartment storage, we're talking equipment that's on it, so an engine does, it's a lot different than what a tanker would do, if that
I
makes.
understand. No, I'm not talking about fewer engines, I'm talking about just less expensive engines with lower capacity.
Okay, so you're basically saying take the tank out of the engines,
Yeah.
and just get another tanker truck instead. Sean could speak to that, but I don't
It's
think
not
that's
really-
cost effective,
Okay.
because a
Right.
tanker, those tankers are, what were they, like $250,000 a piece, I think?
I wanna say it's like the last tanker we bought was like 285, was 300.
I don't think you're gonna save that much by taking the tank out of an engine. You still need some water on it.
Right.
And we really need need enough water to get started when we get there, while the tankers are coming and being filled with water, the ponds being set up. So operationally, it's not a good solution.
And just so, NFPA, the people that govern the fire service recommend that truck replacements basically are 20-year in a town like us, where if you go to a city, it's usually 10 years, you're taking your equipment off. So we're getting 25 plus years out of our equipment, so we're exceeding what we're supposed to be doing, but right now we're kind of jammed up because we have 3 trucks that are backed up. And before you know it, engine 2, like we saw in on this sheet, is going to be coming up in 2027, 2026, 2027. So it's not that far away when we look at it.
We have the same number of calls in a small town as they do in the city.
Right. So they say usually 10 years in the city and 20 years for, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But one thing one thing that our apparatus does, because they hold water and they're fully loaded at all times. So even though they're just sitting there, there are stresses on the equipment just from being parked with all that weight in them. Unlike, say, for example, a dump truck at Public Works, which the sand is emptied out, and so it's not on the suspension system. Fully loaded.
That's the other reason why you do like a custom truck, because all the underneath, the shocks, everything that's heavy duty, the brakes are heavy duty. Those trucks sit 24/7, 365 with all the weight on them. Where dump truck, if it gets used 8-10 hours a day, comes back, it's unloaded, it's empty. It's not loaded to the gills 24/7. So. The other thing with fire apparatus, I mean, you'll see it with the operating, is tires. We have to replace our tires every 7 years, whether they need it or not. And the tires that come off really are in good shape. And we end up donating them to Public Works so they can put them on the dump trucks. But per DOT, every 7 years we have to replace the tires, whether they need them or not. So there's a lot of stuff in the fire service that is really out of our control that we have to do. But the trucks that are getting older, we're seeing more repairs with them. We're seeing a lot of rot. Engine 3, the truck that we're looking to replace pretty soon. 7 years ago, we sat before you guys, and we had to do an upgrade. I want to say it was almost $30,000 for lights, and we had rust on it. And we said it's a 5 to 7 year truck, and we're at the 7-year mark now. So.
But
trying what we can do.
With regard to the tires, I've told the story that I was walking through the bay and saw a stack of tires, and I assumed they were the new tires coming in to be put on. They were actually the old tires that got taken off. But the tread was practically like new, because it's a time limit, not a tread life. But what that means is that Public Works gets a lot of value out of our old tires, and tremendous life on them. So even though they're expensive and we spend money on them, they're not thrown out.
Anything else? Thank you. And
Thank
I've
you.
been requested to please take your name tags with you. And as you carry them, be careful, because if you do this, you'll be replacing all the, so grip them tightly. On to the center. Kind of early, but.
We have 35 minutes.
7:30.
7:30.
7:30.
Thank you.